Hello, everybody. I'm Daniel Ebneter, CEO of Karger Publishers. Welcome to the Vesalius Innovation Award pitch event, the last of 3 sessions Karger holds as part of this year's virtual Frankfurt Book Fair. Surgeon Andreas Vesalius not only revolutionized anatomy when he published the book De Humanis Corpore Fabrica in 1543. His work also took typography and illustration to a new level, laying the foundation for an entirely new view on the human body for many generations. Fast forward to 2020, health sciences publishing is ready for a new revolution. The movement towards open research and the increased use of digital technologies in healthcare are fundamentally changing the way researchers, doctors, and patients create and consume knowledge. With the Vesalius Innovation Award, we've embarked on a quest for startups that have what it takes to spark this revolution. I'm very pleased with the number and quality of applications we received and the 5 great finalists that we were able to select for today. My warm thanks go out to Karger's business partners T&Q, our presenting sponsor, and Enago, who have spontaneously and generously supported our initiative. I'm also very grateful to the Vesalius Innovation Awards Advisory Board that went to great lengths evaluating the participating startups and coaching the finalists. A warm welcome to Cindy Spelt, who will moderate today's event. Again, it's very good to have all of you with us. Enjoy the presentations.
Yes, thank you, Daniel, for your welcoming words. I'm also very passionate about startups and very excited to be here this afternoon with all of you. But I'm not on my own. As Daniel already mentioned, we have 6 great advisory board members. You can see their pictures over here. We have Eefke, Phil, Diana, Gabriella, Oliver, and Pia with us. They have been involved for a long time. They have been selecting the finalists. They have been mentoring them. And today we will see them again live with us in this webinar, asking the questions to the startups. So what is our program for today? You will meet these 5 great finalists. We have Sight, Magma Learning, Scholarcy, 4D Interactive, Anatomy, and Medifind. Soon you will discover more about their new ideas, their great startup concepts. What is the program? The program is that each startup has 10 minutes to present. And after those 10 minutes, I will ask the advisory board to join us to ask them questions. Everybody can also use the question option here in this webinar tool. So if you have questions for the startups, if we have some minutes left, you can also ask them questions. We will filter them, and then I will ask the question to the startup. If there is not enough time, don't worry, because after this webinar, you will still be able to connect with the startups and in breakout rooms, talk with them, so you can always have an answer to your questions. As I said, we have 5 startups. The order of the pitching competition is a secret. That keeps everybody excited. But the first one is coming up very soon. So I would love to ask Josh to get ready, because we will start with Sight. I'm now going to share the screen with Josh and make him presenter. There is a long list of people. Let me check where Josh is. Here he is. Josh, I'm giving you now the screen. And you can present and put your microphone on.
Great. So can you guys all hear and see me?
I can perfectly hear you and see you.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for organizing this, and thanks to the other startups for also participating. It's really great to be amongst this company. Some of the founders, which I know personally already. So I'm excited to tell you a bit about what we're doing at Cite and the problems we're trying to solve. And the way that I like to start, kind of this talk is to remind us all that I think, what we do as publishers, scientists, or even as the public with science is really truly amazing, right? We can have this virtual conference. We have life-saving vaccines. Hopefully we have more of these coming soon. We have powerful computers in our pocket. We inform how we raise our children, policy, how we even stand at presentations. All these things have been touched by scientific research. And I think it's good to step back and think that we're not just doing typesetting and things like this. We're really doing meaningful work to improve how scientific research is communicated. At the same time, science is also inefficient. And so science itself shows that if you try to validate or reproduce studies in fields like cancer research, machine learning, or psychology, more often than not, you can't. And that's a big problem, both in terms of opportunity cost, and so other people wasting their time, in terms of money. There's billions of dollars per year spent on scientific research, and ultimately people's lives. This impacts our day-to-day. I think we can all feel that with the pandemic going on and false news kind of being shared out there, and that is something of a challenge. It's also something of an opportunity. And so our mission at Cite is to make science more reliable, so that everything that scientific research informs can be better. We can have all these breakthroughs and cures and treatments and understanding of the world more efficiently. And so the way that I like to kind of show what Cite does is to show the world as it exists without Cite, and then to show the world as it exists through the lens of Cite. And so this is my actual PhD work, which you can see I was looking at chromosome segregation defects in cancer cells. It was published in eLife. I did my PhD at Virginia Tech. We collaborated with the hospital in Portugal, as well as a lab at the NIH. It's been cited 40 times and then viewed roughly 7,000 times, actually. And so what we want to focus on and really kind of change is this metric here. And so instead of just saying it's been cited, changing how has it been cited? Has it been tested? Has it been supported, or has it been disputed? And so in today's world, if you click that number, you'll come to a citation index and you'll see a list of titles. And if you have access to this, you will maybe be able to click on these titles and read what that says. This is a massive amount of work that I would say that most people are not doing, right? You're not reading 40 papers just to understand what they've said about my work. At the same time, that work is directly relevant, it's citing it, and it could have very meaningful and impactful information in there. And so how can we get this information in a digestible way so that it can better inform our actions, our understanding, and ultimately sometimes our research? And so with Cite, this is what we're doing. We are changing the conversation from how many times has it been cited to how has it been cited. And we do this by extracting the citation context out, so taking this little excerpt of text and then showing a classification if it provides supporting evidence or disputing evidence. And so in this first case, you can see that it says, in agreement with previous work, the trisomic clone showed similar aberrations, albeit to a lesser extent. And so without having even read this article, you can see that there's independent support from the literature in really kind of a matter of minutes. And to me, that's quite powerful. As I mentioned, we are all doing this virtually for a reason. So we're in the middle of a pandemic. The pandemic has not only changed our lives, how we live day to day, but it's also changed publishing a bit. So a lot of new research is flowing through preprints. And so here's this massive uptake of preprints across many different preprint servers. And the challenge here is, there's even less safeguards or quality assurances. This is being posted without peer review and often very much shared in many cases. And so what can Cite do in this kind of new world or even with preprints? And so again, looking at the world without Cite and then through the lens of Cite, you can see here's this medRxiv preprint. It's unclear if it's been cited because they don't have citations. It has had a massive outreach, and so it's been picked up by 57 news outlets, blogged by 12, tweeted by thousands, shared in Facebook and videos. And so unquestionably it's been shared, but is it reliable, right? Is what they're saying something that we can trust? How does the peer-reviewed or how does preprint literature refer to this? And so if you look at it through the lens of Cite, and this is a different way that you can view the citations on Cite, you can see that it has actually received 7 supporting citation statements and been mentioned 19 other times. And so this is interesting for a couple of reasons. One is that you can see the literature providing support across it, across multiple papers. But then the other is that how quickly citations are now accumulating. So some of these citations are coming days within the posting of this. And so how do we do this? So in order to do this, we need access to full text articles. Once we have a full text article, it comes in JATS XML, which is structured text and easy to parse, or more generally, it comes in a PDF, which looks like this. We have a lot of machine learning that goes into extracting the in-text citation, which if you're a publisher, you know, can come in a variety of different styles, PDFs, 2 columns, things like this. And so there's a lot of work that goes into just extracting the citation and text from the full text. Once we have that information and that little excerpt of text, we have a deep learning model that's been trained on roughly 50,000 manually annotated citation statements to indicate if it provides supporting or disputing evidence. And so to date, we have analyzed just over 22 million full text articles from a variety of different publishers. We've extracted 727 million citation statements, and this is growing really like 1 million or 2 million statements per day. And that means we have information on over 40 million different journal articles. And so this is a lot of powerful information that can be utilized to better understand and better evaluate scientific research. Here are some of the publishers that we've worked with. Karger is quite an early one, and so we're very thankful to be able to process their articles and look at these things. Wiley is another one, and we have actually nearly a dozen now. And so I think this is worth noting. And so how is this used beyond just kind of the research or individual level? Well, we're working with publishers to display this information in the metrics section along references to provide, you know, this easy to kind of digest information for readers, for scientists, and for the public. And so here's an example on biotechniques. And then if you look on the left, actually, this is a screenshot from Scholarcy showing this reference check. And we'll be going live on over 100 journals on Wiley very soon. In addition to displaying this on published documents that have citations, we're also now working with submission systems and publishers and journals to provide this reference check at the submission stage. And so processing unpublished documents, we can automatically detect the references, match it to our citation database, and flag if someone's citing something that's been retracted or heavily disputed. And we think this is useful for authors, editors, and peer reviewers to ensure that what they're putting out there is reliable. And I think, you know, reliability and kind of, you know, this information overload is really kind of the crux of what we're trying to get at, because these problems are only going to increase. There's only going to be more content published or posted each year, and a lot of this is going to come through new mediums like preprints. And so I would be remiss if I didn't mention, you know, this is not only our idea. So Eugene Garfield, who created really citation indexes in science, published back in 1964 an idea for citation markers. And he mentions these markers appearing alongside the usual citation data and suggests ones like critiques or Mr. X is wrong, or my favorite, calamity for mankind. He also suggests that the intelligent machine would examine a new document and generate a critical statement such as rather poor paper. And so I think it's really kind of nice that we are fortunate enough to have the tools to be able to do this and to kind of bring this vision to life. And so this is the team behind this. Milo is our CTO. He has a degree in classics actually from Cambridge, where he did social network theory analysis of Homer's Odyssey. So he was going from text mining classics literature now to scientific literature. Patrice, who's developed this open source tool, Grobid, and has over 10 years, you know, really focused on text mining scientific papers. Sean, who's in charge of wrangling all this data from various publishers and different sources. And then 2 recent hires, Ashish and Dom, who are really fantastic, both information backgrounds and both, you know, taking this amazing amount of data and resource and making it useful for people in their day-to-day lives. And so with that, I would say thanks. There's my information. You can email me directly. You can tweet at us or tweet at me personally. And I'm looking forward to hearing feedback and questions as well as the other presentations. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. That was perfectly within those 10 minutes. Awesome. You trained that, yes. Now I would love to ask the advisory board to switch on their microphones, please, and their cameras so that you also pop up in this screen so we can see you. There is Phil, Oliver, yes. Pia, welcome, Evke and Gabriella. Hi, and Diana. Hello, all of you. So we now have 5 minutes question time. And for the advisory board members, you all have your microphones on, but it would be great not to talk all at the same time. So I think we should work with raising hands. Is there anybody who would like to kick it off with a question? We have 5 minutes for questions now. Okay, Phil, you have a question. We start with Phil.
Yeah, we were just playing hands up chicken there, weren't we, to see who would raise their hands first. Yeah, so excellent, Josh, well done. That was a really nice presentation. There's some really interesting work that you've done there, particularly from a technology point of view, and it's a really interesting semantic challenge. But it's not a new challenge, and it's been attempted many times in the past. One of the problems that people face is that it's very, very difficult to distinguish a positive citation from a negative citation, and it's particularly bad in the scientific literature because of the way that people use language in scientific articles. And I do notice in many of your examples, if not most of your examples, the majority of citations are classified as neutral, neither positive nor negative. Is that a particular problem? Does that limit how useful this technology can be? And what are you doing to try to address that and improve the level of discrimination?
Yeah, so this is a great
Josh,
question.
before you answer, just a question. Just before you answer, could the other advisory board members switch their microphones off? We hear too much noise. That would be great. Yes, Josh, go ahead.
So this is a great question, and one that we often run into from a lot of users. And so the first thing that I will say is that, it's very important for us to define what does supporting and disputing actually mean, because we're not actually just looking at positive or negative sentiment. And so we are looking at a rhetorical function. Does this support or dispute with evidence? And so, researchers always search themselves first, and then they search work that they know to be bad. And oftentimes they're surprised that we don't have hundreds of disputing citations. And that makes sense if you understand the definition of what disputing means in our case, right? So it's not enough to be critical or have a negative opinion about it. You really need to dispute it with evidence or new analyses. And that is indeed a minority. And so about 94% of citations are mentioning, around 5% are supporting, less than 1% are disputing. And I think that's a reflection of the bias in the literature, but I do think that's an accurate number based on, people are not always retesting other people's claims. I do think mentioning, which is this bucket, kind of this default bucket, could be expanded, and we could introduce those new classifications where you do have sentiment that it would be based more on opinion, albeit expert opinion. And I think down the line, this is something that we will start to explore is do we want to add these different things? And so I think the challenge is getting this right from a machine learning, deep learning perspective to where you can have perfect precision, perfect recall, but then this equal challenge, which is, maybe less attractive, is the UI. So informing what we actually mean, because if you have perfect precision, but someone defines it in a different way, it doesn't matter. So that's a big challenge for us. But I think this is one thing that, the frequency of citations, them being rare, almost makes them more valuable, right? And so in that sense, being able to look at a paper and then quickly see like what do these dozens say or 5 or 2 say, can really help. But yeah, it's definitely something we have as a challenge. Also, one other thing that I can address is next to each, and this is not a live demo because I wasn't that confident, next to each citation statement is this flag. If you hit this flag, you can say that we got it wrong, and you can make a suggestion as to what it should be. And then this is reviewed independently by 2 different experts on the back end and either accept it or reject it. And so there's this feedback mechanism because it is challenging and we're never going to get it perfect because scientists write in very nuanced ways. Hopefully people start to write more explicitly so we can see these debates more clearly as the tool becomes more adopted. And then the last thing is, I think we're also just lucky, right? There's this timing aspect. So we had this idea about 5 years ago. Had we really full on pursued it about 5 years ago, I think we would have failed because I think that the tools, so the technology, which again, science informed, was not there. And it is now there to where you can, utilize some of these deep learning models, not just for this, but as we'll see in other presentations, a lot of really kind of magical applications. And I think timing is a really good thing that we have on our side.
Thank you, Josh. It's actually almost time. I have a small minute left, so very, very quick question. Does somebody have a very quick question? Yeah.
Hi, just
short question then.
Short one, yeah. Who do you see your main target audience? Is it researchers, publishers? Who would be your consumers? Or
Yeah, so we work with publishers, and I think they're strategically very valuable. We are getting content from them. They're displaying our metrics. This helps us become a standard as opposed to a startup doing something interesting on the side. We also do provide them this reference check, which we will charge for. And so there is some revenue to be had in academic publishing, but I think it's more so that we're getting benefit out of their content and working with them to display this. Researchers, whether they're at a university and they're an individual, or researchers at a pharma company, is kind of the main target audience for this. And so we're now in a pilot with a large pharma, and in fact, before this, I had a call with another one that will help them assess, what they're putting out there. So making sure that their communications are accurate, and then looking at their research to keep track of it. And so I think really kind of, and this is maybe I should have just given a short answer, like it could be anyone that cares about science, right? Because I think this is an easy way to assess how it sits within the literature.
Thanks, Josh. It was an amazing presentation, and thank you for answering the questions. Thank you as well to the advisory board. We're going now to the next presenters, which are Emma and Phil from Scholarcy. So I'm going to give now the room to them. Let me find Phil. Yes. Pia and Diana, you can switch off your cameras and microphones, and then we have Emma already in there. Diana also, please. And then we have Phil. Yes, Diana, can you please leave the room? We still see you. Yes. Hi, Emma. Hi, Phil.
Hi.
Phil, we don't hear you.
Oh, sorry, that's better. Hello.
Okay. So as soon as you start talking, your 10 minutes start running. Good luck.
Great.
Cool. Thank you. So thank you everyone for joining us at the Vesalius Innovation Award pitch. And thanks also to Karger for hosting the event. I'm Emma Warren-Jones, and I'm here with Phil Gooch, and we're the founders of Scholarcy. So today we're going to be giving you a quick overview of what Scholarcy is, what kinds of problems that it's solving, and who's using our technology at the moment. And the problem, put simply, is that there's too many papers out there and just not enough time to read them all. There's a huge amount of relevant and high quality research on any given subject, but researchers simply don't have the time to absorb it all. And it's not just a question of discovering the best information, it's understanding and applying that information that really matters. So the risk is that important findings that could support new studies are being missed. To put this into a little bit more context, there were more than 3 million articles published in 2018. And the problem isn't limited to published research. The number of preprint servers, which are increasingly becoming an important resource for researchers, have grown by over 300% since 2015. Researchers are typically spending 45 minutes reading a paper, and the average researcher reads around 250 papers a year. And all of that adds up to 23 days each year just to read the research. If seasoned academics like Professor Oliver Jones are overwhelmed by the volume of research they have to sift through to find relevant material, what chance do new researchers and students really have? Often they'll rely on skim reading to keep up, but when you skim read, it's easy to miss important information and quickly forget what you've read. So we've developed a solution that's reliable and much more efficient. Scholarcy uses machine learning to read and distill articles into summary flashcards containing the key findings in just a few seconds. Scholarcy does the skim reading for you so that you can determine in a really short space of time how useful a paper is to your research or whether you can ditch it and move on. And our research has shown that Scholarcy can reduce reading time from 45 minutes to just 15 minutes, while also helping the reader absorb information that's key to the study, such as the most important findings, details of study participants, and any significant data. That adds up to 125 hours saved per researcher per year, and the potential to save an eye-watering 1 billion hours of reading time for the research community worldwide every year.
Great, thanks Emma. So let's have a look at how Scholasy turns documents in any format into bite-sized knowledge, promoting both discovery and understanding. This is particularly crucial right now, given the amount of research on COVID-19. Here's a recent preprint on the controversial drug hydroxychloroquine, and it's 24 pages long, but Scholasy's deep learning technology is going to distill this into a single paragraph written in plain language, and it takes just a few seconds. So what we have is a quick summary that's been generated using our deep learning summarizer. This is really useful as a quick overview for those unfamiliar with the topic and as a way to promote the key research findings. If you're not an expert, then the automatically generated links to background reading on technical terms can be really helpful. For example, this link goes to the Wikipedia page about the drug ivermectin. So this is just a single article, but with our cloud-based API, this can be done at a large scale. Often, however, we want to get the latest articles as they are published. And this is normally done with feeds, subscribing to a feed from a particular publisher or a preprint server. The problem with these feeds is that they just tend to provide the title, and then we have to go through and read each abstract to decide which one is going to be most relevant for us. Instead, Scholasy Library can take an RSS feed from any content provider and deliver the key highlights and findings direct to your inbox. Each article in the feed is distilled to a key takeaway in the headline column that you see here. And this is an example from a PubMed feed on immunotherapy that we've subscribed to recently. Let's have a look at another example. This feed is from the latest COVID-19 preprints from medRxiv and bioRxiv. As before, we've got an informative headline for each paper, and then we can go in and read a distilled version of each paper. So we get a link to the original PDF from which this summary flashcard is derived, which is fine, but the problem with PDFs, as I'm sure you're aware, is that we have to scroll through to find the information we want. And in this case, in this paper, the figures are right at the very end. Now, I'm not going to scroll to the end to find the figures because we have a much better way. With our machine learning distillation engine, each section and figure is only one click away, and we can zoom in on the full-size images, which is a bit hard to do in the PDF. Key facts are automatically highlighted by the engine, as we can see here. And we also get the main research highlights and direct hyperlinks to cited sources. So I'm going to go ahead and actually find that cited paper. Sometimes takes a few seconds. So while that's loading, there it is. We have another option, which is to actually summarize the cited source. So if we don't want to actually go ahead and read the full paper, we can get a quick digest of each cited paper. And this is useful for verifying if the citation is, first of all, correct and whether it's relevant. So we see the main findings of that cited paper, and also using the technology from Cite.ai, which we heard about from Josh earlier, we can also see in context whether this paper has been supported or disputed by any other researchers. So in summary, with one click, Scholasy turns any document into rich interactive knowledge. So this makes research available immediately in a format that's accessible to multiple audiences.
Who's using Scholasy today? Researchers and students worldwide are using our consumer app to generate and store summaries of papers and book chapters. And there's currently 20,000 weekly users of our free tools and thousands of paying subscribers growing at a rate of 30% every month. Libraries and research communications departments are also using Scholasy to generate plain language summaries for research promotion. And discovery services are licensing Scholasy's API to generate summaries, highlights, and key takeaways from research at scale, making it easier for their readers to digest. Some examples of organizations licensing Scholasy are A Minor in Beijing, Meta from the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and Cactus Communications. And as you can see here, our users really like that they can get the essence of a piece of research faster using Scholasy and are able to spend less time skim reading and more time writing. Our business model has two streams, a B2C model comprising of free rate-limited tools such as our Chrome extension, and a premium service currently priced at $7.99 per user per month. Universities and other organisations can give all students and staff access to Scholasy with a tiered annual licence, and content services can license our API based on the volume of documents they want to process. Just very briefly amongst some of our achievements to date, we have thousands of paying subscribers growing at a 30% month-on-month rate. Well-known content research services and organisations licensing Scholasy to improve both visibility and impact. In a recent survey of over 200 authors, 85% said that Scholasy summaries were informative and useful. And we secured seed investment in 2019. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. And there's our email addresses there if you'd like to contact us. And we're also on Twitter @Scholasy.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Phil. That was amazing. Also amazing numbers there already. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can I please ask the advisory board to put on their cameras, not your microphones yet, so that we can see you? Yes. Thank you. And if you keep your microphones off, then we don't have too much noise. But I think that, Oliver, do you have a question for them, Oliver?
Yeah, I was wondering if it could be, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I guess so, yeah. I was wondering if it could help to find the right peer reviewers as an additional benefit, because that seems to be always a problem to find people in for peer review. And based on the article, you have to read the entire article, and the summary would be sort of a quick fix to identify right people. Have you ever thought about this?
That's an interesting question. I mean, we think it could be a useful tool to help peer reviewers to go through a paper more quickly and find, verify citations, for example, and just check the key findings. But actually using it as a tool to find peer reviewers themselves, no, we hadn't really considered that. Potentially you could do that by pulling out the key terms and the key findings and then mapping those to reviewers and building up some kind of database of expertise, if you like. So yeah, that might be a future option.
Great. Anyone else from the advisory board who has a question? Pia, yes.
So maybe it's a too simplified question, but how do you make sure that you're not losing information or important information?
So we're going to lose some information, by taking a 5,000 word document and reducing it down into maybe a paragraph for the highlights and maybe a bit longer for the other summary. So the question is the engine is trained to focus on what it looks like the key findings by analyzing the language. We've done some evaluations with some publishers and also with authors, and I think this was also mentioned in the presentation that in general we get it right about 80% of the time. There's going to be cases where we pull out some irrelevant information or miss some important stuff, but that's kind of the figure we're currently at, and we want to get that further towards 90–95%. It's difficult when most of the source documents we work with is PDF, because that's a very hard format to work with. So potentially in future, as more authors using more modern tools and they're writing directly in XML, for example, we can get better quality text out and maybe increase that accuracy further. So the information we pull out is always correct in that it's always derived from the original paper. But it's true that we might on occasion miss some important facts in that distillation process.
The one quick thing I'd add to that, Phil, is that we have in-app a feedback mechanism, so that individual researchers and students are continually feeding back to us this isn't pulling out exactly what I would expect it to. So it's a sort of an iterative improvement as well as the technology from our users.
That's right. And typically we're updating the back end software every week, and sometimes more than every week. So it's continually being updated and improved.
Very good. Anyone else from the advisory board? We have one question left. Yes, Eefke.
Yes, just like Cindy, I was very impressed by the subscription numbers that you already have. Congratulations on that. It made me wonder what your next strategic steps are. Is it your aim to remain sort of independent and an own subscription service, or are you considering strategic partnerships? Or you know, with sites we saw that they're teaming up with many different kind of organizations. Do you have any plans in that direction?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and I guess both could be the possible answer to that. So we've seen really since March a big uptick in terms of individual subscribers, and we're working with resellers globally to sell institutional licenses to universities. We're seeing quite a bit of traction outside of Europe, in fact in Asia particularly, and some in Latin America. But equally, we are partnering with third parties to license the API so that they can generate summaries at scale. So whether they're discovery services or content services. So yeah, I don't know if you want to add to that, Phil.
Yeah, there's a couple that we're kind of in discussion with on the sort of discovery service side, using the technology in different ways, helping with the review article process, for example. So yeah, some of that is ongoing.
Super, thank you. I'd like to thank everybody, Emma and Phil and the advisory board, for your super interesting questions. Thank you very much. We're going to the next startup. And the next startup is Magma Learning. So I'm going to ask Maxime to start sharing his screen. I'm going to give you now the option to do that. I still see Oliver and Diana. And Maxime, yes, you are with us. We can see you. Can you also share your screen?
Yes, I'm doing it. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see you. As soon as you start talking, your 10 minutes go in, okay?
Okay, so you can see this window here, right? With the mouse. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Fantastic. So yes, thanks a lot. Thank you to Karger Publishers also for selecting us as the finalists for the Vesalius Innovation Award. So here I will discuss about my startup, Magma Learning, which I founded at the beginning of the year. And we're a member of the Swiss EdTech Collider at EPFL in Lausanne. And today we'll talk about how we can enhance publications with personal AI tutors. So since it's the Frankfurt Book Fair, I will start with this slightly controversial question. How much do you remember from the last books you've read? And so the answer, according to experimental psychology, is not much at all, probably. This is because there is this phenomenon of exponential forgetting. And if you look at a book you've read last week, for example, chances are that you've already forgotten maybe 80% of it. So this is kind of the knowledge axis, and then it very quickly goes down towards zero. So if it's an article you've read last month or some books from last year, maybe you will struggle to even reconstruct one sentence or the key idea of those books. So it's a situation that's quite bothersome, but that's just a reality. So it's fair to say that we forget everything we read, but ARI 9000 doesn't. So meet your personal AI tutor called ARI 9000. So ARI is short for Aristotle, but it's also a contraction for artificial intelligence. So the idea being of combining the roots of our civilization with the cutting edge technology. So the process is that ARI will help you consolidate what you learn via a virtuous circle of personalized learning, which is powered by machine learning. So here, by AI, or more precisely machine learning, what I mean is just algorithms that are able to self-improve with experience. So what will happen is that you will learn from Ari, but Ari will also learn from you in order to personalize the learning and make it more efficient and more adapted to your needs. So there's really this kind of two-way learning between the two. Before explaining a little bit how this works, let me say something about the context. So Karger has conceptualized very nicely this cycle of knowledge in the health sciences and in publishing, which has two sides. You see on this right side, you have this research cycle starting with some creative thinking and scientific experiments. They lead to a discovery, which is then validated and published, and then other researchers can discuss those publications, which then trigger some new creative thinking and so on. But of course, this research cycle is only truly meaningful if it's also transferred to the rest of society. So there is also this part here, which is knowledge transfer, where you see that the scientific publications can be transferred to practitioners like clinicians, medical doctors, nurses, and so on, and also to patients as well as just curious lay persons. And we know, of course, that recently the interest for health sciences has been awakened. So what Ari can do in this cycle of knowledge is mostly to enhance the effectiveness of this transfer of knowledge by personalizing it to the knowledge levels, the interest, and also the memory abilities of each reader. So in a sense, you could really say that the publications become alive since they are really adapting to your own needs and they're taking you into consideration, as opposed to just being just an inert pile of paper. Okay, so how does it work? First, Ari will analyze what you're learning, so those books and articles that you've been reading, and it will automatically generate some micro-learning content from it. So this could be puzzles, summaries, multiple choice questions, and so on. So here you see one of those questions on the screenshot of the app. This is using some cutting-edge natural language processing, which is developed in collaboration with professors at EPFL and Sorbonne in Paris. So then after that, the Ari will also optimize your revision schedule to make sure that you achieve long-term retention with the least effort. So here the concept is to implement the well-established psychological principle of spaced repetition, according to which the best moments to revise a concept that you're learning is when you've half forgotten it. So you shouldn't revise it too early because it's just boring and staying in your short-term memory. But you also shouldn't wait too long because then you have fully forgotten it and then you start from zero again and again. So you're getting nowhere. So the only way to really consolidate learning is to revise just at this sweet spot where you have forgotten it. And then this allows your forgetting rate to slow down. So you will remember it longer the second time, and then the third time you remember it maybe for years or decades. So this is really the recommended way to study and consolidate your knowledge. But of course, this will depend a lot on your personality. So from one learner to the other, there will be a lot of variations in the strength of the memory, in the interest, in the motivation, in the knowledge background, and so on. So this is where machine learning really enters, and it can personalize this spaced repetition such that it ensures that you get just the right content at just the right moment for the maximum effectiveness of learning. So this approach has been demonstrated with several experiments at top universities and institutions. For example, at EPFL, the students that were using the app got better grades than those that were not using the app. So it went from 4.0 out of 6 to 4.8. So it's a significant difference. And also at École Hôtelière in Lausanne, a similar improvement was observed. So it's very encouraging for the effectiveness of the technology. Another benefit of this approach is that since Ari continuously learns about your knowledge levels, you can also ask Ari to show you where you're standing. So this means that you can visualize your knowledge. And it's crucially important when you want to make constructive progress in anything you're doing to have visibility on how well you're doing and where you can still improve. So this is what Ari does. So if we take a book, for example, Ari will first represent the entirety of the content, so all the key concepts and the key ideas, will be represented as some sort of three-dimensional constellation of points, each point being a concept. So for example, those green points over here will all correspond to genetics concepts. And so you have this kind of space of knowledge for a specific book. And as a reader of the book, so for example here, you can see what you are mastering from the book and what is still left to master or what you've already forgotten. And so this system can really give you some very intuitive visual feedback on your knowledge, on your learning progress, to motivate you to push the boundaries of your knowledge and follow optimal learning trajectories. There is also a further benefit of this visualization of knowledge is that the creators of the book, so the authors, the publishers, can also have some feedback from what the users, what the readers are doing or struggling, for example, with a specific chapter, which could indicate that the pedagogical quality could be further improved. So coming back to this Karger cycle of knowledge, we see that not only ARI is able to really enhance this knowledge transfer, but there's also this kind of feedback mechanism that makes this cycle two-way in a sense. So the content creators really get some feedback from the experience of the readers. So this could be a very interesting and fruitful directions for maybe the future development of publishing. So here's a short video that we've done, so I will let you watch it, and I'll be back in a minute. Yeah, so hopefully this gave you some idea of ARI in action. So finally, what I should mention is that, so here I focused on the publishing sector, but of course we help many organizations across many sectors to enhance the effectiveness of learning, which is very critical for the success. So it could be schools, universities, companies, of course, hospitals or non-profit organizations worldwide. And an interesting thing to note here is that personalized learning is really great to adapt to diversity and to promote inclusion. So if we think of a school and children that might be very talented to learn are in the same class as children that might have learning disabilities like dyslexia, ADHD, and so on. And what personalization does is that ARI will really make sure that all those children are really taken into account for their uniqueness and that they can really make the best out of their learning potential. So thank you very much, and I'll be happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Maxime. That was an amazing presentation. I see that you have an amazing ecosystem around you of great schools, universities, and I wish that I had ARI with me when I was a student. But that was, yeah, 15 years ago. So, yes, can I please ask the advisory board to join us again for the question round, please? Yes. Who likes to kick it off with a question for Maxime? Gabriella, do you have a question?
Gabriella, do you want to go or shall I go, Diana?
Diana. Okay, Diana, please go.
Okay. I was just given.
Diana, we lost your sound. Can you please try to put your microphone on again?
Okay.
Yes.
That better? Okay.
Yes.
Given that you have just described the school situation, Maxime, and the spectrum of learning abilities, and I know that, for example, in Switzerland, there's a big move right now for integrated schooling. So this would have enormous applications to for inclusivity in the schooling environment. The same would obviously apply in the university situation, would it not? Because we obviously have very talented students. But the other one that I was going to raise now, you might like to comment about, is that in this age of AI, every employer wants their employees, if I use the buzz phrase, to be active learners with a growth mindset. So would you like to sort of just comment on how an employer might use ARI to personalize the learning for different concepts they want employees to use, etc.?
Yes, of course, we work with many companies in Switzerland and abroad as well, in Europe and in the US. Yeah, so for corporate training, it's a vital factor for the success of a company. And indeed, having a personalized private tutor can really help enhance the effectiveness of the training programs, because it's the same in every field. If you have, let's say, a one-week seminar of intense courses on leadership or communication or marketing, you might think there's a lot of great ideas and concepts, but a month after that you will have forgotten most of it. So having this personal AI tutor following you makes sure that you can apply all those skills with great impact to your career. And indeed, the personalization also helps taking into account the various backgrounds and the various abilities that you can find in large companies. So this is this is pushing diversity forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next one, we still have time for a question. Gabriela, yes. We don't hear you. Yes, we hear you now.
I like the feedback to the authors and publishers very much. How exactly will the feedback get to them?
So they can also visualize, let's say, if it's a specific book or an article, they can visualize the average of their readership. And then they can see that, so the luminosity will represent, in a sense, the mastery of the readership, the readers. And so if there are zones that are lighter, then it means that it was very well explained and very efficient. But if certain zones are very dark, then the corresponding chapters are maybe lacking in clarity, like literally. And so this is also a very intuitive feedback, which is just a visualization. But then, of course, you can translate this in a lot of numerical metrics, like the percentage of understanding and so on. But I think this kind of global visualization is also the best intuitive system.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. A very, very short question, the last minutes. Evke.
I'm getting curious about the business model. Is it mainly an institutional market where, for example, a university or a school or a company would take one subscription for all its pupils, or what?
Yes, exactly. That's the current model. It's B2B model, so the organization will pay for all the students or the readers or the employees and so on. But we will be developing a B2C freemium model also quite soon.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Amazing. There was also a very quick answer. Thank you, Maxime. Thank you, everybody. We're going to the next startup. I'm wishing you all the best, Maxime. The next one is 4D interactive anatomy, and I'm now going to give rights to Attila and Urs for presenting.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, we see your screen. If you like to put the camera on, we can also see you there. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. There we go.
Okay, this is number 4. We still have 2 to go. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
We thank you as well, and welcome everyone. My name is Attila Balog. I'm a neurosurgeon. I work at the National Institute of Clinical Neuroscience here in Budapest. And I'm also the founder of 4D Interactive Anatomy. I've been practicing and teaching surgical approaches and anatomy for more than 20 years.
And I'm Őrs Ádám. I help Attila's vision of a better anatomy education become reality.
So understanding human anatomy is a vital part of our training. Each day when we work, we rely on knowledge of the human anatomy that may save or end lives during surgery. So this knowledge also empowers us to inform our patients about the risks of the procedures and gain their informed consent. But anatomy is best understood by studying real human cadavers, for sure. Yet dissecting a human body was a huge taboo for most part of the recorded history, and for thousands of years, physicians relied on animal dissections. But a true pioneer from the 16th century, the name giver of this event, Andreas Vesalius, recognized that learning anatomy from old and inaccurate illustrations was not enough. So he wanted to train better physicians and give their patients a better chance at life. As a surgeon himself, As a surgeon himself, Vesalius understood the need for a better anatomy education based on real humans. But during his time, dissecting a human cadaver was considered immoral and a sacrilege. However, a judge in Padua, Italy, took interest in his works and recognized his good intentions. And the judge granted Vesalius the unlikely approval to dissect executed criminals for the benefit of mankind. So rather than accepting the old principles set by his predecessors, Vesalius decided to study anatomy based on what he saw. His seminal work, known as Fabrica, was the result of his findings. So his work laid the foundations for modern human anatomy education. He proved that cadaver dissection provides the best understanding of the human body. Therefore, cadaver-based dissections are still considered as the gold standard of anatomy education today. Yet, many of the challenges of working with real cadavers remain with us since Vesalius' time. The lack of real body donations create a shortage of available cadavers. Cadaver labs have serious inherent limitations. They're only accessible during certain times of the day and usually become very crowded. Labs are very expensive as well to maintain. The specimens, once dissected, are wasted. And now in the era of the pandemic, most labs are closed. So anatomy educators have to rely on alternative tools. But atlases of anatomy present fixed views and they are not interactive. Computer-generated models do not provide the level of detail that is needed to understand real anatomy. And plastinated specimens and plastic models are expensive and may only be available on campus. So by overcoming these problems, we could improve anatomy and patient education and anatomical research worldwide. We aim to combine real cadaver dissections with the advantages of new technologies, making the dissection experience reproducible online. So to do so, first we needed a specialty device to capture high-resolution images of cadaver dissections. Then we had to partner with medical schools with real body donation programs. Finally, we had to find a way to deliver the huge image data set to medical schools.
But a specialty scanner is not something you can buy off the shelf at the Media Markt. So we had to develop our own scanners. The first generation scanner was a small manually operated device, but it worked as a proof of concept. Over the years, we have further developed our scanners and they became faster, harder, better, stronger, as the Daft Punk song goes. Our current third generation scanner is located here at the University of Debrecen in Hungary. The fourth generation scanner will be a state-of-the-art equipment which will be serial produced. The new model will be installed at Western University in Canada, starting our global expansion. By placing our scanners at multiple universities, we will create an imaging network that will continuously supply with the content that we use on our website. The medical universities we partnered with can use the scanner as a student engagement tool and a research tool. The images captured are used for illustrating course materials, publications, and research as well. The students' high-quality dissections are published on our website, and they are credited for their work. The images are captured at the university's labs in line with their body population programs. On that note, we would like to say that 4D Interactive Anatomy is grateful to the wheeled-body donors who make this platform possible in the first place. By now, their altruistic sacrifice helped to educate tens of thousands of students worldwide. To get where we are, we still had to solve the challenge of delivering our huge image dataset to medical schools. Initially, we used DVDs for delivering the images, but as the technologies evolved and our database grew, we moved everything to the cloud. By now, the 4D Interactive Anatomy platform and its contents may be accessed from any device with an internet connection. No special equipment or formaldehyde needed. Students' learning capabilities are greatly enhanced as they can actually manipulate the photographic images and dissect the specimens layer by layer over and over again. The intuitive platform integrates seamlessly into universities' existing curricula. URL links pointing to the structures on 4D Interactive Anatomy can be pasted into any kind of course materials. The users can also export any of the 1.5 million images that we currently have in our database.
So by combining photographic images of dissections with the advantages of digital technologies, we have managed to achieve our goals. Users may tilt, rotate, and virtually dissect the specimens online. That is why more and more educational institutions choose our platform to supplement their anatomical education.
We serve over 30 institutions worldwide, but many more are currently trying out our platform. 4D Interactive Anatomy has helped over 20,000 students develop their understanding of the human anatomy so far. Many of them already became or will become the next generation of doctors. Knowing that they will cure thousands of patients over their lifetimes, we are honored to participate in their endeavor. We are also delighted to hear that our clients find 4D Interactive Anatomy indispensable in their anatomy courses. As a matter of fact, over 80% of them renew their licenses each year.
4D Interactive Anatomy is set to revolutionize anatomy education. As we go global with our scanners, we will dynamically expand our database with more specimens, with unique anatomical variations and pathologies. We like to entertain the thought that Andreas Vesalius would have used 4D Interactive Anatomy to develop his understanding of anatomy and educate his patients, should he have an internet connection. So thank you for considering 4D Interactive Anatomy for the Vesalius Innovation Awards.
Thank you, gentlemen. Luckily, we have internet today, right?
Well, the students nowadays have it easy, we could say.
Yeah, exactly. So I would love again to ask the advisory board to join us. Yes, and I know that, is it correct that the other two members of the team, Ulvi and Babak, are also here with us?
Yes, they are listening in. And,
they're listening. So if they like to join or put the microphones on and answer the questions that are popping up, I will let Attila and Urs manage that. But they are also welcome to join if they like. Okay, so 5-minute questions. Is there a jury member that likes to kick off these 5 minutes? Can I see a hand if somebody wants to start? Phil, yes, please.
Thanks, Attila. Thanks, Urs. That's a great presentation. Now, full disclosure is I've been working with the 4D Interactive Anatomy folks as part of the program, so I know a little bit about their company, a little bit more about their company. But one thing that I'm really interested in, there is a number of similar services out there that offer various kinds of digital anatomy teaching type approaches, and some of them are from much larger companies that are well established. So what makes 4D Interactive Anatomy different? What sets you apart? Why is this something that is new and interesting that people should be paying attention to?
Yeah, it's the photographic imagery. So the other applications such as primal pictures or 3D for medical, it's computer generated imageries. So if I have to compare the two imagery and just give you an idea what the difference would be, then just trying to look around in the room and try to make an illustration and try to take a picture of it. So the same thing applies for the lab as well. So when you see the cadaver in its entirety and in reality, that's different. That's different for a surgeon as well. So the photography is the main differentiator, I would say, and the interactivity, because the level of interactivity 4D has is unprecedented. So there is no other application offering the dissection simulation in this photographic environment, because you need the scanner that we've developed in order to develop these images.
Thank you.
You could say that nobody is crazy enough to try to do this, because it's just so time intensive. You have to start with the scanners, then you have to find the right medical schools who will cooperate with you and work through the body donation programs to make sure that everything is covered. And then
eventually you have to dissect.
Yes.
So sometimes these modules take 400 hours to dissect layer by layer. So sometimes there is 2 hours in between the layers of dissection, sometimes 2 weeks. And then, so it's a lot of aspects. It's the hardware that we needed to develop. Sometimes it took, the initial scanners took us 2 years from the concept to develop it in the garage. And then obviously the 4th generation scanner, which is coming up, it's 2 months anymore, but we're over the learning curve already. And then the digital platform as well. So we started with DVDs, and then we realized that we have no ways to transmit all this huge amount of data set on DVDs to the end users. So we needed to convert the entire system. So it's a robust software development that lies behind 4D as well.
Thank you. I know that Oliver has a question, and Diana as well. Who likes to start? Okay, Oliver. Oliver, we don't hear you yet. Let's put the microphone on. Yes.
I was wondering, in terms of interactivity, to plan something like that, you can remove virtually tissue to expose, for example, a bone structure.
That's exactly correct. So you can go between the layers of the dissection, and you can even project them into each other. So you could visualize deeply situated structures in relation to other layers of the human body. So that gives you this really nice spatial understanding about where the different anatomical structures are located and how they relate to each other. That is not something you can absolve with just simple 2D images. You need to have that level of interactivity where you can really project the structures to each other.
Yeah, I've seen once at Apple keynote that you could use the Apple Pencil to just use it as a scalpel to remove something, and then a vein or something else would show up, and you would get a feeling how deep inside the tissue this is hidden. Would that be possible?
If I have to compare this to something, imagine Google Earth, the program Google Earth, but in addition, you would be able to peel away layers of the globe until you make it disappear. So that's what 4D offers.
Okay.
So and we built it, reconstruct the specimen on your computer and real specimens.
Thank you. Diana, up to you. You have to put the microphone on first.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Diana.
Myself, are you?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Cool. I'm going to ask the futuristic question, because obviously the world has been taken over by AI, particularly with the COVID-19 pandemic. It's moved things forward at a rate that is unprecedented. So I suppose the futuristic question is, given that 4D's technology is also being developed in 4 phases now, can you envisage a time when maybe the anatomy laboratory education will actually be totally replaced by technology like 4Ds?
Well, me as a surgeon, I just don't believe in it because I think students will have to have hands-on experience. But obviously in this era, in the time of the pandemic, you need something which resembles probably the closest to reality. So, and that's what 4D brings to the table. So we don't advertise 4D as a replacement. It's an adjunct, a supplement to anatomy education, and I strongly believe in it. And I just don't want to convert anatomy professors so that they just neglect, you know, the dissection, because I don't believe in it. So I encourage students. In fact, this is the reason why I believe in these scanners, and they are engagement tools. So students can go to the lab, use these scanners, they can create something, these modules, so they get involved, engaged in dissection. So even though they have 2 hours on a weekly basis or 4 hours, they add another 2 hours so they can proceed with their dissection. So they engage, it's an engagement tool we designed for.
Thank you. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for the great presentation. Wishing you all the best with the next steps. Thank you, advisory board, as well. Last but not least, we have Medifind with Patrick. Patrick, I'm going to give you the screen soon. Yes.
And can you confirm you can? Oh,
we can already see you, and we can also see your screen. Yes.
Okay.
Patrick, you're the last one. Thank you for your patience. Wishing you good luck with your pitch.
Well, thank you. Thank you, advisory board, and thank you to all the other great presenters. It's actually fun and amazing to watch all the great work that's being done out there. So I've learned a lot already today, so I got a good benefit. So let's start with why I'm here. Very simply, my brother asked me this question 4 years into his journey with a rare disease. While I'm not a doctor, I was leading up analytics at one of the largest healthcare companies in the world, and I did have some considerable experience dealing with medical literature as well as a bunch of other medical data sets, and started to use that capability to help my brother out. So his situation, he spent 4 years struggling with this disease and literally kept losing time trying to learn about different experts, different new treatments. We ironically, I think I said this before, we actually went to eventually learn about a treatment in Switzerland that took us forever to find out about. It was the best treatment we ever had. It wasn't available in the US at the time. We found that through literature, but not through our medical professionals. So the amount of time he lost was disturbing over that 4-year journey. And quite frankly, I would like to think everyone knows his story is just too common. The number of people facing sort of cancer, rare diseases, chronic conditions, they're in the basically in the billions globally. If you look at here to the right, and so there's just the number of people who just struggle to find their way through the healthcare system, and the information it's kind of disturbing, quite frankly. And if you look to the bottom of the slide, there's been a study by the Mayo Clinic here in the US. The number of patients who, when they actually see another doctor or see an expert, who get a different diagnosis is 88%. This has been verified in multiple studies. So it's just scary to think how much is dependent upon the doctor you see and their expertise and knowledge of the literature. So we are here to solve that problem because what you see is the patient experience is just full of wasted time. The graph on the left is just sort of a typical patient experience. They go to a doctor, they're sent to the friend of the PCP who the PCP thinks is, is the best local doctor. They go to a visit, they may get a treatment, it's the wrong treatment. Eventually they sort of ask around and say, does anyone know an expert in this treatment? And months go by and you may or may not find your way to an expert. And that expert may or may not even be an expert on everything that's out there, all the literature that's out there. So our job is to give patients time. So that's very simple. So it's just time. That's what patients, when you're struggling with a chronic serious condition, you just lose time in every step along the journey. So we're a digital health platform. We do a lot more than just the literature, but I'm going to focus on that today. Our goal is to connect patients to the experts and the right treatment protocols as fast as possible, leading to better outcomes and, for some patients, longer life and longer quality of life. So our platform, Medifind, has actually multiple steps. We start with if right now, if you in the world, this journey is fragmented with other resources. So what we're trying to do is put a single place together where you get the best answer that we help a patient work their way through the system. It's also just making sure patients have all the information they need as doctors. Even the best ones are just under a lot of time pressure themselves, and they don't always remember to tell patients everything they need to know. So we start with the symptoms. So if you have some symptoms, we're telling you what conditions they could be. Then you can research those diseases. Then you can, if you have a diagnosis, we can find experts, and importantly, get a second opinion from another expert who's going to have a different view of the world and give you other options. We go through the literature. I'm going to spend time on this to make sure you're aware of all your treatment options and all the advances that are occurring throughout the world. And we also tell you if you're really in one of those situations where you're more desperate than others, what are the currently available clinical trials that are appropriate for your situation? So a significant data and analytics exercise as well as a consumer exercise. So how do we do this? I'm going to a couple slides here, and I suspect I may have some questions. One of the areas we focus on is the literature. That's obviously why we're in this conversation. We curate basically is about 100,000 new academic research articles in the biomedical literature every month. We have a process, which I'll go through in a second, to curate all the information, identify new advances, identify new treatments, and essentially digest that for patients to understand. We cover basically every disease that's in the world at this point, and we cover 2.5 million physicians globally, and so we understand what are all the advances happening and who's doing those advances. And you see the quote at the bottom. One of the biggest challenges you have, even for experts, is just what are the interventions that are buried in the massive research. Basically every company here today is addressing part of the same problem. There's just too much information, and you have to find a way to allow whoever your audience is to be able to consume and digest that information. We have two ways we do that. The first is we connect all of the literature with a whole ton of other data sources, and we actually have a patent on that interconnection. So the focus here is making sure we understand who experts are in any therapeutic category and how those experts connect to each other in a social network. So you see that our databases that are all master. We have publications, we have clinical trials and speaking engagements and referral data. There's more data in the US, quite frankly, than ex-US, but in the US, we also know which doctors are treating which patients with different diagnoses. So we know how many patients they see, they know how patients get referred to them, and we even know which doctors patients are telling each other about. So a significant data exercise with one of the fundamental challenges is being able to link the same sort of authors from one database to the other. So this is a well-trodden problem, but getting it to consumer grade is actually very significant, and that's our patent, which is we know with a really high confidence, 98+%, that Dr. Jones in this database is the same as Daniel Jones over in this other database, which is very important for really identifying both experts and if there's a new research, getting a patient to get to that doctor. So the other area that we focus on, and this is the area that I suspect I'll get most questions, is how we process that information so we can help patients understand what's new. So the important part is getting it to the patient level, as well as understanding what's new and relevant. So we actually, for a few years now, have had this process where we have nurses who have been going into the literature and we've been giving them articles, and we ask them, tell us two things. The first is this article helpful for a patient? And if so, summarize it for the patient. So what that mean is what's the treatment, how many patients were treated, and who are the authors, and what's the kind of conclusion of that treatment. By doing that for a few years, we've then been building our own AI models to replicate that process. So we now have a process where we automatically predict which papers are good, and we actually automatically summarize the vast majority of those articles, and then we hand them to our nurses to make sure it's summarized correctly. So the great thing about this is we all know in the AI machine learning space, it's a sort of self-improving mechanism. As you get more information, it gets better and better. So we continue to refine that and improve the quality and reliability both of the predictive model and the AI that summarizes the content. So just a little bit of the output if you went on the platform today. It's not actually all the functionality, but I figured worthwhile to show a little bit of what a patient can get instantly out of the gate. So we have what we call Condition 101, just a disease overview. We don't consider that anything that's not already available. It's just putting it in a single place. What is not available is actually knowing who the experts are globally as well as locally. In the biggest doctor finders that we hear about, at least in the US, are essentially patients review other doctors. So those do not correlate well with actual expertise. They correlate with how good the office is or how likable the doctor is. And the more serious your condition, the more, I would assume, you're willing to take maybe a less friendly office for someone who really, really understands that disease. And it's well known that in a lot of the more rare diseases, your outcomes are better when you see an expert. So we provide that instantly for basically every disease. We also provide on the right-hand side all the available clinical trials that are going on right now that a patient could opt to research to join, as well as all the doctors that are doing them. And then the latest research. This is an area that probably the most interesting to this group. But as we process all the new research, we summarize it and give it to patients. We know we can get better, but where we are also going with it is giving patients a full summary of every treatment option that's out there. So what we'll see in a couple months is we'll be able to tell you, here's everything that's approved in the US, here's everything that's being studied, even if it's not approved, that has been peer reviewed, and here's how many patients it's been tried on. So we see a lot of this in COVID where you look at a summary of all the conditions and you say, oh, this patient's, this remdesivir has been treated with 2,000 patients versus some other one that's been 5 patients. Gives you a sense of sort of how much risk is built in. So the goal is to make sure patients understand all their options. And ironically, some of the approved treatments, I found the treatment and went to my doctor, and an old treatment that's been around for 20 years that of course I'm going expert. He forgot to tell me about it, and I asked him about it, and he's like, oh yeah, that's actually probably good for you. So it's surprisingly hard to know even what's approved out there if it's not, if it's essentially generic, because manufacturers are not promoting it. So quite simply, our view is, imagine a world where you can just get a diagnosis immediately, consult with an expert immediately, find a second opinion immediately, and we strongly believe in that. Learn about any new treatments and advances, and enroll in a clinical trial immediately. Our job at all points is cut the time on a patient's journey. With that, I'll open it for questions.
Thank you, Patrick. That's an amazing cause that you're working on. Thank you so much. I'd like to ask the advisory board to join us for the last round of questions, please. Yes. Who likes to start? Phil, I know that you have a question. Okay, let's start with Evke first, and then we do Phil. Okay, Evke, can you put the microphone on?
Yes, sure. Thank you very much. I'm really impressed by your service. I did a few searches on it, and it's amazing how quickly you can find even local doctors. But that being said, we have an advisory board here who come from many different countries, and sometimes you think the blockages are not so much in the information, but more in the system in which we all find ourselves. We're all under different national healthcare systems. And how does your information system relieve the pain in that?
It's a great question. So today, we relieve the pain. We don't fully relieve the pain, right? We relieve the pain by telling you what you need to know. And depending upon where you are, and could be, your ability to go get to the expert or get the treatment does vary. So my brother, he wasn't rich, but we had enough money that he could go to Switzerland and pay cash for the treatment at the University of Basel. It was not a crazy amount of money, but not everyone could afford to do that. But knowing that there's an expert or a treatment, you can advocate for yourself over time. as we progress forward, next year we'll start to add services in that go beyond information to actually start to address those problems. So to allow you to get testing directly, partner directly with the providers. So you can get a second opinion from maybe a doctor in another country, even at an affordable rate if you can't get it covered by insurance. So our first phase 1 is information, because that does save time. Phase 2 is actually starting to then hit at each of the components where time gets lost and trying to put the process in place to cut that time out. We're not going to solve all of it, though. We're going to try.
Thank you. Thank you. Phil, next question.
Oh, yes, thanks. Thanks very much. That was a great presentation. I guess my question is kind of related to what Efka was saying there. And to me, it seems like the fundamental problem isn't necessarily lack of access to information. It's lack of access to medical expertise. And, you know, and the challenge is that there are exceptional doctors are rare. You know, that's why they're exceptional. And there are lots of people who require their services. And there's an argument to be made that creating these kinds of services make it easier for people with money to find healthcare, but no easier for people who don't have money to find healthcare. So are there ways in which this can address health inequality and help provide services to people who traditionally don't have access to healthcare?
So there's a lot of questions there. Thank you. First, in terms of a lot of the information you can ultimately find on the internet today, but the amount of time it takes is significant. So I use my brother's example, but I talked to obviously hundreds of patients at this point. Every week, he or his wife would just go down the Google rabbit hole of, am I missing anything? Is there something new? Is there what's out there? So you can find it, but it's how long does it take, and how much effort are you willing to put in to get there? And it can be hit and miss. So you can find experts, but you can, but a lot of times you're asking around, you may miss them, and you have no clue whether there's an expert give a second opinion. So it clearly gives time, although that's what we're trying to do, is give time. In terms of inequality, it's a fundamental challenge, and I don't pretend to solve all of it. For those who are less economically advantaged, at least we can tell you locally, let's say you don't have the ability to leave your area, going to this doctor that's in your health plan versus that doctor is going to give you a better outcome. There's no economic disadvantage there in the US as long as you have insurance. In other countries, it might be easier. I don't pretend I understand US better. So it doesn't fully solve inequality, but information is power to a certain degree. And what we'll be adding are services forward that partnering with other companies to allow patients to even get some of those treatments almost ordering directly. Financial is still a problem. I can say though that one of the foundations of the platform was I wanted this available to everyone, not as an employee benefit, which is kind of the standard way people would go out with this. Because my brother was a school teacher, he would have never been, gotten that employee benefit if we sort of put it into that walled garden. So we can't solve every inequality, but we at least are trying to level the playing field from an information standpoint.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you so much. You're serving a great cause, great work. Thank you as well, Advisory Board, for this last round of questions. I'm now going to take over the screen because we are now almost at the end of this pitching competition. Yes, Diana, I still see you. Yes, and I like to thank everyone who has joined us, the startups, of course, for all your hard work, and I wish you all the best with your next steps. I like to thank Daniel for his opening words and for making this happen, and of course the Advisory Board for all the hard work, and last but not least, as well, the organizing team. We have not met them today, but I can tell you that they have been working really, really hard to make this happen. And their names are Sylvan, Stephanie, and Nadine. Thank you for being with us as well today. We're almost at the end. The pitching competition is over. The advisory board will, after this webinar, deliberate and pick the overall winner and the 2 runners-up, and they will present who they are, these 3 startups, on the STM days on the 3rd of December this year. So super exciting. Fingers crossed for the winners. If you like to stay in contact with the startups, you can. Here you can see in the screen their email addresses, so feel free to reach out to them if you like. They're very much open to stay in contact with you. And what is also an opportunity is that after this webinar, you can still communicate with the startups in breakout rooms. And how can you do this? In the pop-up from the webinar tool in your control panel, you will find almost at the bottom, you will find handouts. There is a PDF, and in this PDF you will find a link, and with this link you can go into these breakout rooms. I think that the startups, as they have been working really hard today with us, will take maybe a 5-minute break, but shortly after 5 they will be together with you. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining this webinar. I wish you all a very great afternoon, and hopefully see you next year again for the #2 award. Thank you so much. Bye from my side.